Hi, my name's Kat and welcome to my channel. So if you've been following me for any period of time, you would know by now that I'm a huge sci-fi and fantasy reader. And a few months ago I did this video which was get to know the fantasy reader, and today I'm going to be doing a different version and it's just going to be get to know the sci-fi reader. So I'm going to be talking about the types of sci-fi books I like, some recommendations, and just all of the science fiction love. So if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and hopefully you will find this video fun. So I have a list of 9 questions here. We're just going to go over them. They will also be linked down in the description box if you're interested to do this video as well. But let's just get started. So the first question is, what is your sci-fi origin story? So I've been racking my brain and I really cannot think of what the first sci-fi book that I read was. I don't think it was something that I read a lot of as a teenager, and so I'm assuming my first sci-fi book that I read was in my 20s, but I cannot put one, like a title to this. I can't remember what one. The only one that I'm thinking like maybe a possibility would be The Martian by Andy Weir. I remember reading this, I believe it was my 3rd year university. I have a very strong memory of when I read this book, and I can't really think of anything else that I would have read before that. But also with sci-fi, so I am a gigantic Star Wars fan and a Star Trek fan and basically any type of sci-fi show or movie. So I grew up watching those. I watched them constantly. So I already had like a pretty deep love of the genre. It was just something that I hadn't really explored in book format prior to that. So question 2, if you could be the hero or heroine of a sci-fi novel, who would be the author and what's the tropes that you would want? So I think I'm gonna go with, so for author, I think I'll go with Claudia Gray, because even though she writes YA books, which aren't 100% my thing, I am obsessed with all of her sci-fi books. So she has a huge collection of Star Wars books, which are all fantastic. And she has a few trilogies, or she has a series about space exploration and another one about parallel universes, and all of them have been fantastic. Like, she is one of the authors who I think I've given the most 5 stars to at this point, which is insane. So I really think that she is one of my absolute favorite sci-fi writers. And for a trope, I'm either something to do with space travel or a first contact with aliens, because I find those are just like so insanely interesting. So question number 3, what is a sci-fi you read this year and want more people to read? I have to think about this one for a second. So going off the last question, you know what, I'm just gonna recommend some Star Wars books. So first off, I have Bloodline and I have Master and Apprentice by Claudia Gray. These are both fantastic. If you're a Star Wars fan, you really need to start getting into the books because they are truly wonderful. This one is following Princess Leia as she's later in her life, in her 40s, and she's a senator and just trying to figure out like what she wants to do next in life after this last adventure, after the last crazy adventure she has, and realizing that maybe the Senate life isn't quite for her. And it also deals a lot with the start of the First Order, which was incredibly interesting to see. Master and Apprentice is Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan early on in their like master and Padawan relationship as they're completing a mission and really figuring out their dynamics with each other and trying to figure out a way that they can interact and be happy together as in this working relationship, because they have just such different personalities. And this one was very emotional and very good as well. Question number 4, what is your fave sci-fi subgenre and what is a subgenre that you haven't read much from? So I'll start with ones that I don't read a lot of. Is anything to do with zombies. I'm really not into. Zombies freak me out like an incredible amount, so I really tend to avoid those. The one recent one that I really loved was The Girl with All the Gifts, but I think this one I liked it a bit more because it was really focusing on a different type of zombie and somebody who was really trying to like have a different type of and just kind of having like a moral problem with being a zombie. So this one I really loved, but otherwise I really tend to never read zombie related books. And also sci-fi horror. It's one of those genres that I always really want to get into and I'm really hoping that I'll like, but every single one I've read so far has really been a disappointment. So yeah, that's one that I do want to read more of. I just never seem to find one that actually hits the mark. And then with my favorite genres, this is so insanely hard to narrow down because I really like a wide array of things. I like some weird things. I like a lot of speculative. I like just a lot of sci-fi. So some that I thought of, I really like books with like a thriller aspect to it. So something that just feels like, well, the ones I'm thinking of for this is like maybe like The One by John Mars, where it's like some type of new technology and it's impacting people's lives, but it also like is leading to all of this like really thriller kind of like scenarios. So those ones are always fantastic. Anything to do with time travel, always love. I really love a good time travel story. And then short story collections are really like a recent one that I've been loving. Like some that I'm thinking have are How High We Go in the Dark by Sakura Nagamatsu, Out There by Cake Folk, and basically anything by Ted Chiang. So any of those recently have been like really high 5 stars, because I find short story collections, you get to explore some really interesting concepts, like things that there isn't necessarily enough content to make an entire book, but it's something that is a really interesting concept and interesting enough to have a type of discussion about. Question number 5, who is your auto-buy sci-fi author? Right now, I'm thinking Becky Chambers. I haven't read all of her books. I have quite a few on her Wayfarer series. I have that all on my shelf to read, but everything else I've read from her has been like high 4 or 5 star. So she's somebody who's really been impressing me. Blake Crouch, he's again somebody who does like that thriller sci-fi kind of thing, and not all of his books are great. Like we're looking at Upgrade, that was not great, but Recursion and Dark Matter were some of the best books I've ever read, and like there's some scenes in Recursion that still are stuck with my head and I just cannot get them out. And then I'm also thinking Andy Weir. I find a lot of his characters are very similar and some of his plot points feel kind of similar, but you know, I am pretty much guaranteed that I'm going to have a good time while reading them. So those are 3 auto-buy authors. Number 6, how do you usually find recommendations for sci-fi books? So this one, it's usually on Goodreads. Anytime they have like a list of like sci-fi books, dystopian books, books about time travel, whatever. There's so many lists that have come out like this, and I'll link a few below, but I typically go through those lists and copy down anyone that I'm interested in, and those are what I go for. I find it's very hard to find sci-fi recommendations on BookTube, unfortunately, and Bookstagram. It's not one of the more popular genres, so, or at least in this type of format and the people I follow. So it usually has to be through those methods that I find it, but I'm hoping that I will find more sci-fi readers and a lot more people to follow, because this is such a fun genre and not enough people talk about it. Number 7, what is an upcoming sci-fi release that you're excited for? And these 2 are already out, but there are ones that I'm very excited for. So there's The Ferryman by Justin Cronin. I really know I like his writing, and I think that this could be a really good one. And then I don't remember the name of it, but it's the last book in the Children of Time trilogy by Adrian Tchaikovsky. I read the first book recently and fantastic, unbelievably good, and I'm just really excited to continue with the trilogy, and you know, hopefully this last one will be just as fantastic. Question number 8, what is one misconception about science fiction that you'd like to lay to rest? So I think the biggest one is that a lot of people think that sci-fi is more intimidating than it actually is. It's really not a genre that's that hard to get into. There's obviously some like incredibly complex books that are really like, I'm gonna say time consuming and mind consuming, but there's also so many that are easily accessible and really like not that intense. They take place in our own world, maybe with something a little different happening, but they can be very easy for the average person to get into, especially if you've never read sci-fi before. I did a video recently going over a few sci-fi recommendations for any type of reader, and I'm gonna be trying to do these regularly of books that maybe aren't as difficult to get into and that somebody just new to the genre might find a bit easier to read. And then similarly to that question, number 9 is somebody has never read sci-fi before, what 3 books would you recommend? I'm gonna reference you to that video that I just talked about, and I have a few recommendations that I think are great for sci-fi, beginners to sci-fi. So there you go, that is my get to know the sci-fi reader tag. Please leave me some comments below if you are also a sci-fi reader. Let me know what you like to read, and I would love to hear more about it. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Bye.